Okay, we have a second speaker, Guillaume. Please, your screen.
Thank you very much, Misha. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you all for coming and for attending online also. And thanks a lot to Misha for this organization. It's I can see it's a bit of a mess because I'm sharing the lab with the IPA, and I can see him struggling with many things. So thanks a lot, Misha, for all the efforts of making this happen. So today I'm going to talk about work, coexistence, and phase separation of pairs and fermions in one-dimensional model with pair hopping, which is actually a work which is part of Lorenzo Gotta's PhD thesis, and he did a big part of the work, so we have to thank him for all his contribution. We are working with Leonardo Mazza, who is also at LPTMS, like me, and also a joint work with Pascal Simon, who is the next neighbor at LPS. So it's actually a local work here in Orsay. So it's not fully about impurity model, but we'll see that at some point some impurity model will shows up, and we'll see the connection. Otherwise, it will be about pairing and fermions, which is also a central subject for the conference. I will be actually a bit sloppy about citation. I'm sorry for that, for the following reason. So I give the citation of the work. Can you hear me? I put it upper, like this, like this. Okay, sorry for the sound. And actually, I only have 2 slides with previous work, and I think the best not to omit or to miss one or to put some before the others is basically to see the reference of the introduction of this work. So I apologize for that. After some general context, we'll talk about a model that we were studying, the Ruhmann-Hartmann model. And here will be the core of the talk, which is about the pedestrian explanation of our finding about this model. So I will be very following the story of how we get the various understanding of the model. It's about 1D physics, but actually I will use very little of Luttinger liquid theory. We'll see that we can understand almost everything with a basic 1D free fermion with some little bit of phenomenology on top of this. And last, there will be a large part on extension of this model and some further effects with the example of phase separation of pairs and fermions. Okay, so first some general interest in pairing. Pairing was a way to understand superconductivity and how to make 2 fermions bind into a boson. So the BCS model was the historical one and was actually maybe not the simplest one, but it captured 2 important things. First, it's a picture in K-space, in momentum space, where you take 2 fermions C from the Fermi C with opposite momenta and with opposite spins to make a Cooper pair. And with a tiny interaction, you can create a kind of a condensate of this pair that makes the system superconducting.
Something isn't right.
Something is not.
Yeah, it's very sensitive.
To each the mic.
Yeah, but it's very sensitive. You can hear you do it. It's true. It's just
It's better like this?
No, that's like I said. It's just to be at the level.
Okay, sorry. I don't see the level actually on my mouse. But you see better than me.
You don't need to put it inside.
Okay. Okay. Second important stuff is that there was this question of molecule formation from Lucy pairs like Cooper pairs in space and tightly bound molecules of particles, which eventually condense into a BEC, and that's all the works around the BCS BEC crossover, in which the size of the pair changes from Lucy to very short range. So actually in 1D, we also have models with loosely pair and very tightly bound pairs like molecules. Historically in 1D, actually most of the work has been done with particles with internal degree of freedom for the good reason that electrons have a spin 1/2 usually. And basic model is the Hubbard model, where you just put a local interaction on site for fermions that makes an opening of a gap and transition to a Luttinger liquid of pairs. And in this case, all fermions, when you go to the transition, are involved in the Luttinger liquid. So there's basically only pairs when you increase the cross the transition. You can have larger molecules by using many tricks, but two of them are mass imbalance, two particles of different masses, and higher spins to have a larger internal degrees of freedom. And with this, you can build trimers, quadrimers, and more complicated molecules. So there is a lot of work on this. More recently, there is an interest about how to make pairing in spinless fermions. So essentially, there is a couple of papers on this, and there are essentially two strategies. Either you play with direct density-density interaction, but for that, in 1D, you have to fade phase separation. What happens? If you take just kinetic energy term like this, and attractive interaction like this, where U1 would be negative, then you end up with something that maps onto the X-exit model. And before you can open a gap or create real pairs, you go into phase separation because basically all the particles are gluing in a single domain. So to fight this, you can add some extra repulsive interaction in the second nearest neighbor, just to prevent this and to stabilize pairs. And this is an example of phase diagram obtained by Lorenzo in the previous work, in which you see here for U2 equals 0, the X-exit model, where you have this phase separation whenever you reach -2. And when you fight this with a U2, you can stabilize what is called here a cluster Luttinger liquid of pairs, but it's essentially a paired phase. So that's one way. And the other way was used by Ruman and Atman. It's a pair using a pair hopping term. So instead of using interaction, you use some kinetic energy for the pairs. And this actually comes back to models that have been studied a lot in the 2000s by people from condensed matter for systems which were actually spinful. So here it's the version which is spinless, so a priori a bit more simpler. But there is a lot of the phenomenology coming from here, which is a bit similar. So more details about the Ruman paper. Their motivation was to look at sort of a 1D BCS, BEC-like model where you have a weakly paired phase and a strongly paired phase with spinless fermions as a simple degrees of freedom. Their model is just this one: kinetic energy of particles and kinetic energy for pairs that are neighborhood. So we'll come back to this Hamiltonian later, but here are the essential results. They find a transition with an emergent Majorana degrees of freedom between a weakly paired, so Luttinger liquid, and a strongly paired with a gap. You see the appearance of a localization of a coherent length here in the system coming with a. And at the transition, what was very exciting is that they have this extra Majorana degrees of freedom, which makes a central charge equal to 3/2. So they could track the central charge as a function of T prime over T, and they found two Luttinger liquid of C equal 1, and at the transition, something close to 3/2. And then they use this in sort of an inhomogeneous chain to have some domains between those two phases, strong and weak pairing, and to create the Majorana degrees of freedom between these domains. So we wanted to study this because this was exciting. So we took the same model. First thing, we realized that there was an error in the sign, and actually what is positive here in T prime actually corresponds to negative T prime in the correct model. And then we realized that the other part, actually here, that they found more like a first order transition, they say, was actually very rich and interesting. So they first focus on this, and we are not going to focus on this since they did it well. So here is the model, and here is the basic phenomenology we can say about it. So you have these two terms: kinetic energy for fermions, kinetic energy for the pairs. Sorry, it moves again. Okay, very sensitive. And this term actually is not so trivial. So it's a pair hopping. So you gain energy if you have two fermions neighborhood, and you can move them. So you need free space to move them. If you have a third particle occupying the site here, you can gain some kinetic energy on the right, but not on the left. So somehow, if you really want to gain energy with this term, you need to put particles together so to make pairs, but also to have pairs repulse a little bit with each other in order to maximize the kinetic energy. So this very simple four-body term actually have both some internal repulsion and attraction within it. So of course, it's a nice model because it's a single parameter and writes simply into some operators. So here is the phase diagram that we propose. So there is a little bit of sign change. Before that was the work of Roman and Altman here. And we focused on this phase in which we find between the fermionic and another pairing phase, a coexistent phase which has central charge C equal to. So basically, we have a phase where you have the coexistence, this is what it's named C phase, between K equal pi pairs and unpaired fermions. So I'm going to explain why we have both K equal 0 and K equal pi pairs, and then what are the features of this phase. So first, the pairs. So to do that, we study very large limit of T prime over T in order to have essentially the kinetic energy of pairs. Depending on the sign of T prime, we get either a condensate of pairs at K equals 0 or pi. Why can we have that? There is a simple interpretation in terms of effective Hamiltonian. In this limit, we need the effective Hilbert space to be constituted of neighboring sides that are occupied, pairs, and the rest that are vacant. Otherwise, you cannot gain energy with isolated fermions. So in this limit, you can map the model onto an X-exit chain, but a chain, since you heat up one side by doing this mapping to pair to spin up, you reduce the effective size of the chain by the number of bosons or the number of pairs that you have in the system. So the effective model is just an opening term, kinetic energy, with a change inside. Here you have plus T prime and an effective size, which is LB. So you have a band model. You can fermionize this and get free fermion band. And depending on the sign of T prime, either the band is at K equal to 0 to the minimum or at K equal pi. So this is the origin of the difference between the two. And this difference can also be understood in terms of a unitary transformation that leaves the Hamiltonian invariant, which is this one. You have a little phase shift on each fermionic operator, which changes the pairs by some -1 to the distance between the position of the pairs on the lattice. And effectively, in K space, this amounts, this -1 to some power, to shifting the K vector into K plus pi. So we'll see there is a strong connection between the two phases by just shifting the two momenta. Now we can compare this basic analysis with the numerics. So first, for the effective X-exit model, if you were really at T equal to 0, you sum up the fermionic energy, it gives this, with the correction given by the fact that your total size is not the L, the initial size of the system. Of course, this matters at high density here, when you close to 1, but effectively, later on, we are going to work close to 0.25, 1/4, for the density in which the difference is appreciable, but not as significant as for large density. So the picture is simpler at not so large density. Now, if we want to understand pairs, we can compute the Green's function of these pairs, which is the pairing correlation that we define here, which is just destroying some pairs at position R and creating it back at the bulk of the chain. And between the two phases, for plus and -4 here, that are pretty much the same up to a factor -1 to the R as from the unitary transformation. So here I show the structure factor coming from this correlation, which is the Fourier transform of that. For negative T prime, you see at K equal to 0, the bosonic peak with some shoulder. For T prime over T equal to 4, you see the peak at pi and -pi with some shoulder. And if you shift this signal by pi, they are almost the same as for the K equal to 0. So actually, the correlation are strongly related to phase. When you're deep in the pairing phase. If we want to understand more the physics of this paired phase, we can look at more observables. The local density, the local kinetic energies. So one kinetic energy, which are basically the two terms of the Hamiltonian, one for the single particle, one for the pairs, and also the Voigtman entropy profile, which is when you cut the system at position J into 2 and compute the entanglement entropy between the two sides of the system. So here we are in the paired phase, P pi. There are 200 particles, 200 sites, so 50 particles and 25 pairs. And you realize, basically on the density, that you have one bump per pair. So these are really like Hall-Court particles. For the kinetic energy, there is no kinetic energy, no contribution from this term. It's here in the Hamiltonian, but since the Hilbert space effectively prevents any contribution from this, you have 0 for the yellow one. Of course, you get kinetic energy for the green one, for the Harker boson, and for the entanglement entropy, just a regular one with a bit of repulsion between the Harker bosons. Now, if you want to look, so this kind of picture will be very useful for later interpretation. Now, for correlation, you can compute single particle, pair correlation, and density correlation. It's a Luttinger liquid of pairs. The dominant correlation is the pairing correlation, and the Green function is actually exponentially decaying quite fastly. So here there is a big difference. This is a P pi, this is P naught phase. So the difference is in the blue. In the green or the yellow one, you don't see, it's an absolute value, you don't see any difference. So there is a slight difference still in the typical size of the pairs. So in the end, this pair phase are single one Luttinger liquids, single particle gap or gap phase, and strongly localized pairs in null space. So now, what about just a quick slide on the fermionic phase here? They call it a weakly superfluid. Why? Because when you have a 1D Luttinger liquid, which is fully gapless, you can have dominating pair correlation if the Luttinger parameter K is sufficiently large, which is favored by interaction, attractive interaction. So this is just showed here. Local observable show like a droplet getting out of the edges. And for the correlation, the dominant one is the pairing correlation. But the G here is not gapped, it's still a power law. Okay. And the transition here has been studied by Ruman and Atman. So now, what do we observe when we took the numerics and try to cross this transition line? So at some point, you look at the local observables in your correlation, and you see this. You see both rapid fluctuation of little particle, about 1/4 sight distance, and some larger bumps, much smoother. So naively, from this, you are asking yourself, do I have a combination of both pairs in the system and fermions? So this translates both in the kinetic energy, where you have contribution from both the single particle kinetic energy and from the pair kinetic energy. And last, in terms of correlation, everything is algebraic, so you cannot really say anything from this mixture of signals. So in order to understand this, we also looked at the entropy profile because it gives an estimate of C, the central charge, which essentially for Luttinger liquids counts the number of modes, bosonic modes that you have in the system. And it's something that you get right away from the MRG calculation that we are doing. So here again, if you look across the transition, here you are in a fermionic phase, so you have fermions, one bump for each fermion. T equal to, you have the pairs, so half the number of bumps. And in between, you have a huge increase of the entanglement entropy. And if you fit this pattern with this formula that I'm going to explain, you can get the central charge. So you do that. Here is the formula, which comes from field theory, which adds some extra terms. So main term, you just need a prefactor, which is the central charge. It gives you the central charge, a constant, and then two terms that account for the fluctuation of the kinetic energy. So there are only 4 parameters for the fit, and we can get quite reliably the C exponent. So you see in black the fits and in dots the numerical data. So by doing so systematically, we can get the central charge as a function of T prime over T, and we see around 2, before 2, a huge increase from 1 to 2. So there is kind of a big step in the numerics, which is quite clear. So this is also in favor of having 2 modes in the system or 2 degrees of freedom. So this is quite surprising because we started with some model which is only spinless fermions. So from bosonization at T prime equal to 0, you cannot expect more than a single bosonic mode. It's hard to increase the number of bosonic modes. But there is an explanation, not for this one, but for the other one, there is other side. There was some guess also by Ruman and Atman by doing some mean fit theory that you can get more modes in the system, explaining the C equals V half. And here in this situation, if we have two modes, they are almost independent and contribute to the system. So now the goal is to have some effective phenomenology to understand this kind of pattern in the system. So we try the simplest thing and then try to improve on, but the simplest picture was already giving a quite good result. So it's an example of effective two-fluid model for this system. What we are assuming is very simple, that we have just the Hamiltonian that is split into a fermionic part and a bosonic part, fermionic for free fermions that are leftovers, and bosonic part, the same as before, for the pair. Both are known exactly for the energy, and we still have a constraint in terms of the density because we are not destroying or creating particles. So there is a density of fermions and a density of boson that satisfy that the total density should remain this. If we compute the energy of the ground state of this guy, we get this, which are simply energy of free fermions filling a band in 1D, but the density is this one. And here we do not change even for the pairs. We do not take LB as before. We just take L, the size of the system, for simplicity. So if you do this, you have a variational energy. You optimize on the NF. You can do that partly analytically. And you get the following picture. You start with a fully fermion phase. Then you have a coexistence of fermions and pairs. And then a fully bosonic pairs, which of course has half the number of density as the fermionic one. And then you have also the evolution in between. So that was already nice. And we try to push as much as we can the interpretation in this direction. So here is again the interpretation in terms of band filling. We have a band for fermions and a band for bosons. But the pair bands has a positive sign plus T prime. So it looks like this. You start by filling the fermion, and at some point, it's energetically favorable to put the pairs into the band. Notice that here, there is no chemical potential that should be equal for the pairs and the boson. The only constraint we have is this one, which translates to a constraint into chemical potential that is not the same for the two. So this picture is normal in terms of chemical potential. And then, of course, when the T prime term is very large, the band is very deep here, and you better put all the pairs into the bottom of the band. But you can compute the evolution of this and follow it compared to the energy. So in dot line here, you have the two-fluid model. And if you compute the first derivative, which actually corresponds to the total kinetic energy of pairs, or the second derivative of the constant energy, you have this behavior which qualitatively match pretty well with the numerics. And also, what is interesting is that with finite size effect, here you take a small system, 56, so you have 14 particles and 7 pairs. Each time you have a plateau here means that your energy is essentially linear with T prime. So you're adding a pair in the system. So first pair, second pair, third pair, and so on, up to 7 pairs here. So if you're working, say, experimentally on a finite small system, you can control the number of pairs that you have in the system by just selecting the good parameter T prime over T, and over some window, you really fix the number of pairs and remaining fermions in the system. So this is quite interesting. So now, why do we have a difference between the negative T prime and positive T prime? So here, effectively, we should need to consider the interaction between the pair and the remaining fermions, and this is not easy, but we have a guess for explaining this asymmetry. If we take again this band picture, we see a clear difference between the two situations. The argument is the following. If T prime over T is negative, so Roman alpine paper, we have both the fermions and the pairs that are filling at k equal to 0. So if you have some scattering processes that conserve total momentum, you can take two fermions here to create a pair, and vice versa. And this you can do because you have available momenta to do that. If you have T prime over T, which is positive, if you take two fermions here, whatever the k they have, it's really hard to build a pair with k equal pi. So this is strongly suppressed. This is somehow why, even in 1D, which is very favorable for scattering, okay, 1D, you cannot escape scattering. Here, this bond filling picture tells you that it's really hard to make these two fluids hybridize to each other, leading to, in one time, more complicated excitation, something complicated here, effectively. And on the other side, something which is much simpler in terms of benefiting. So this was really surprising in 1D because it's not usual to start from 1 degree of freedom that split into several. Now we want to be more quantitative and try to get some estimate for the critical points. From the DMRG, we get a precise estimate for this two transition. And now for the two-field model, just bare non-interacting particle, you get 1.41, which is not bad. And you can improve a little bit on that by just saying that when you have fermions, essentially, with only one pair in the system, so the left-hand side, sorry, here, it physically corresponds to the following situation. You have a sea of fermions, and you start to create one boson in it, one pair. It's the limit of 0 pairs. So it's actually an impurity problem. You have a single pair within a bath of fermions, but this pair is made out of the fermions. And you can consider that this particle removes a little bit of site for the fermions. So even though the density is pretty small, it changes the prediction for this position of the critical point into something, just this excluded volume effect, into something which is pretty close to what is observed in the emerge. So somehow this part is easy to guess. This one is more difficult. From the free fermion, the two-field picture without interaction, you get this result, which is not bad, but which is a bit far from 1.93. And you can improve a little bit on this with the following image, which is quite different. I think here the physical situation is that you break a pair to split into two fermions, and that's the limit of having two fermions. And these two fermions are likely to be trapped between two pairs that have a certain distance. And if you do the calculation with a discrete lattice model, you end up with the second critical point, which is a bit better. Now, how to probe this phase? So experimentally, consider that you're with open boundary condition, and you can access the density profile. From this density profile, so I recall this, that was the density profile in the coexistent phase that we had before. You can just take the Fourier transform and hope that the main vector peak will give you information about both the density of fermions and the density of pairs in the system. So that's what we did. And here is the result as a function of T prime over T. And first in the F and P pi phase, what do we have? We have here just a fermionic phase at 2kF. So that's the basic Lottinger liquid result. The same for the hardcore bosonic pairs. Here, it's basically flat at point I, also 1/8 here in terms of 2kF. And in between, you have the coexistence region where you see the emergence of several peaks. So sorry, it doesn't show up well the third one in the screen. The main one is actually NF plus NB. There is another one here, which is NF, and you also see NB emerging up here in the signal. Basically, you see from them. And why do we have NF plus NB? It's just because effectively, these pairs occupy some site, and the effective distance between the two fermions or between the fermions and the pair is depending on the total number of effective particles, which comprise both the pairs and the fermions. So it's not 1 over NF, it's 1 over NB plus NF. Okay, and this shows up pretty well. Okay, if there is any question, I can take some. Do not hesitate. Yes?
So you call it coexistence, but isn't it more like a mixture actually?
Yes, you could call it mixture. It's at this level, it's a semantic name, so you can call it mixture. It's like really miscible liquids. I'm fine with this. Now if we want to get more knowledge about the effective degrees of freedom, when we are computing correlation numerically, we are using these C and CC operators to get pairs. But actually, in the picture that we have in mind, what we consider as free fermions are actually isolated fermions without neighboring fermions. And for the pair, it's the same. We are considering that pairs are actually pairs without neighboring fermions or empty sites. So in order to separate in the Sorry. Okay. Is it fine? Yeah, okay. In order to separate the occupation factor, the contribution from the pair and the contribution from the isolated fermion, we defined these operators corresponding to these pictures and compare them to the usual occupation factor of fermions. So here are the results for the three phases. In the fermionic phase, you have this step function, which is the standard for Luttinger liquid, which would be like the Fermi distribution for three fermions. And there is no contribution from the pairs, as expected. In the pair phase, we have a strong peak at k equal pi, while the blue one, corresponding to n of k here, gives a signal that we understand microscopically, and which is sinusoidal. So we see the difference here from this and the pair signal here. And lastly, if we are in the coexistent phase, we see that the blue signal has two peaks at pi and 0. And if we compute each contribution from NF and NP, we see the black one for the fermion and the red one for the pairs, which really separate the two contributions. So we can really identify in this blue signal the contribution from the pair at pi and the contribution from the fermions at k equal to 0 or around k equal to 0. And this is somehow a direct image of the band picture feeling that we got before. You know, feeling the pair band here, feeling the fermionic band here. Okay, so now we wanted to push this a little bit and to see the stability of this coexistent phase by adding something which is both natural and both actually quite interesting, which is just nearest neighbor interaction, either repulsive or attractive. So here we find the x-axis model on the vertical line, but we are at density 0.25, so there's no charge density wave for strong repulsion, but we have ferromagnetic phase separation for negative U1. And there on the horizontal line, we have the previous model when you do the cut. So you recognize here the C phase and the paired and fermion phase. What is new here is that first, the coexistent phase survives quite well, and that we are going to see that for very large interactions that are not seeable on this diagram, we have a phase separation now between pairs and fermions. And we are going to analyze this in the rest of this talk. So first, what is the ferro-PS phase? It's just the phase that corresponds to the ferromagnetic phase of the x-axis model, that basically when you have strong interaction, negative U1, all the particles will form large domains that are degenerated and lead to some shitty numerics because you have a lot of domains of particles. How can we understand the transition from this to the paired phase, P pi and P naught, by saying that if T equal to 0, we still have this kinetic energy for the bosons. And now if you look at the effect of the interaction for the pair, there is an effect that if you create a pair and you have U1, you will have to pay U1 or to gain U1 to create the pair because they are neighboring particles. But also when you put pairs close to each other, there is an effective interaction. If you want to put the pairs close together, you have to pay some U1 or to gain some U1. And this is the effective interaction between the pairs. So I forgot the chemical proportion term here for simplicity, that we will see later. But basically, this is again an x-axis model. And you know that the transition to the ferromagnetic state is given by this, which gives the limiting lines here on these two directions. So we understand this part of the diagram, and now we are going to focus on the top right hand part of the diagram. In this limit, it's good to start first with T equal to 0, which is bad for this diagram. So imagine a large circle here, and you do a cut. You will end up with only one parameter, which is U1 over T prime. And along this parameter, you go from the pi phase to the fermionic phase by an intermediate phase, which is a phase separation phase. And then we are going to study the limit of small t non-zeros. So what do we observe with the energy? Because it was an help when we did the study, we always started from inspiration from the numerics. So we observe two typical situations. First, a situation where we see a phase separation with, on one side, a Luttinger liquid of pairs, and on the other side, very compressed fermions up to 1, which correspond to this charge density wave, because we have large U1, there is a strong repulsion between the fermions. And in this limit, actually, this costs zero energy. So we observe this. And in terms of kinetic energy, we see that there is a clear splitting and domain wall between the two, and that the fermions have no kinetic energy. Here, it's really a crystal. And here, it's a Luttinger liquid. On the other hand, sometimes for lowest interaction or larger T prime, we have or larger T, small t of the particle. We have here more liquid, so the numerics are difficult, so it's not really oscillating the way we expect, but somehow we see that there is a kinetic energy here next to the Luttinger liquid of pair. So in order to understand this, we are going to do some further technological consideration. And first on the energetics. So U1 tend to break pair into distant fermions to get this, and it works as a chemical potential for the pair. A single pair, if we put it in the system at the bottom of the band, it has energy minus 2T prime. Okay? If you fill up the band with pairs, you get an energy for these small densities, which is not very far, minus 1.8 T prime. And then the last consideration is that if you have a charge density wave state at strictly T equal to 0, it costs zero energy. There is no opening of the fermion, so it's a zero energy. So there are two consequences. First, the F phase, having the fermion, is favored when U1 is too large because you break the pair. So this is above 2. If you are below 1.8, it's always favorable to fill up the fermices of the pairs. So you expect to have the pi pair. But in between, you don't really know. And what we argue is that there is a transition at 1.86 following this model. So the model is rather simple. We follow the van der Waals phenomenological approach and just look for a solution which has two domains. So in order to do so, we are going to fill up the lattice with 2NF sites of fermions in a charge density wave state. And for the remaining part, we are going to fill up these pairs. So for these pairs, you have the size of the system, which is reduced by the charge density wave domain. And you can remove also the on-site contribution from the pair themselves. And in this context, U1 will merely act as a chemical potential for pair. So here is the variational energy that we have. NF is a free parameter. You can optimize, find the critical point prediction. And this is the numerics for the variational point. So of course, this matches. Higher, okay. But this is why we get the prediction of 1.86 from this model. Actually, it's very hard to do the MRG in this regime for some technical reason and conservation law. So we rather believe the model in this T equal to 0 limit, but we'll see the comparison with the MRG later. And this is a good route now for studying the T non-zero limit. And here, the only difference is that now we allow for a fermionic domain with some kinetic energy for the fermions. So we have a finite little t. And we have now two parameters to optimize on, the density of fermions, and then the density of boson fixed, and also the size of the domain of fermions, which can be changed. We have some constraints about this parameter, and we just remark that if we have a density of fermion which is 0.5, this would effectively correspond to the charge density wave state. And the last thing is that for these fermions, since we are at very large U1, we are going to implement some excluded volume corresponding to the charge density wave picture. So we have three kinds of energy: kinetic energy and potential for the pair. Here, theta tells you about U1. Fermions only, with this excluded volume 1 minus 1. And then a combination of the two with some finite domain. So it's not complicated to write, but I mean, physically, it's just the sum of these two, but on different domains. And then you optimize within this constraint, which is very important, and you see the result. So the result, for instance, is given here for some set of parameters, and these for finite small t, you can compare them with the MRG. So maybe I start with the MRG. This is the two previous plots that we saw, and now if you take the Fourier transform of the density profile, you see this kind of picture with periodic boundary condition. So here you have the pair phase, I think. Here the fermion phase, and here the intermediate phase between the two. So of course it's a bit tricky because you have many signals in K-space. You have the size of the system, you have the signal from the fermions, the signal from the pairs. And all these are finite size because you have domains. And you still see some contribution from large system here. So you see a domain here, and the contribution from the density. And somehow, if you compare with the result of the effective model, you see that you have both a region where you have fermionic that are not charge density wave away from 1/2, and a region where it's saturated to 1/2, which you see here a little bit. So even so, it's very basic plain vanilla, this model. We are very happy that it's coherent with the DMRG observation. Of course, the critical point here are a bit away from this one, but still it's impressive that the number match so precisely. So if you gather now and you collect all these results onto a diagram, this is a diagram as a function of U1 over T prime, which was the previous diagram I showed you here. And now you extend in the direction of T. And you see the following thing: there is this intermediate phase that has two regimes, one with charge density wave domain below the green line, and one with fermionic liquid domain above the green line. And the black lines are the effective model, which of course numerically you can do much larger than the DMRG. It's even in the thermodynamical limit. And a few cuts here that corresponds to DMRG calculation that even if they are away from this, they are not very far, and we are very happy with this. So my last slide now is how this connects to the original phase diagram. Remember, we were working at very large U1 and T prime. So there was this phase separation. We knew that there was this coexistent phase at lower interaction and T prime. So the question is how these two limits connect to each other. And this is a very challenging question. We focus now on this diagram, which is the same as this one, but we just change the abscissa into something that somehow follow the line here along this direction to widen the phases. So we see the coexistence phase with the DMRG up to U1 equal 10, which is much larger than this diagram. And there, it was really hard to get the DMRG for this. And we trusted the phase separation model. And we see that the two somehow almost matches to each other. We don't know which scenario is, whether there is a pinch between the two, whether there is a crossover, whether there is always a window between the F and P wild phase. This is an open and difficult question, but we were still happy to see that they connect not too badly quantitatively. So here I done with my talk. So first, we were quite surprised actually to see that there was such surprise days in 1D physics, because for such a simple model, we get a lot of physics and non-trivial and surprising physics we found. And in particular, it was really remarkable to have a two-fluid picture from a single degrees of freedom Luttinger liquid, and also the existence of a phase mixture or coexistence and phase separation. It is something that we never think about when we work in 1D. I mean, at least for my background, situation where you have phase separation or basically correspond basically to the ferro phase separation kind of phase separation, but not really formation of a single wall between two domains like you have in van der Waals fluid. So we were quite happy with this. And then, well, I did not do any field theory. There is a bit of discussion of field theory, in particular thanks to Pascal Simon in the papers. So you can have a look at them for the technical details. But essentially, we found that the DMRG, the numerics, and the phenomenology were quite successful, and we were quite surprised by this. And in the end, I think it remains still a challenge for field theory, and this is why many people from field theory are interested in this kind of two-fluid model approach. It's not easy to treat effectively. There is some remaining interaction between the fermions and the pairs, and this opens some further questions and non-trivial, maybe impurity problems. So in the perspective, can we go beyond the pairs and find some trimer formation? We have some preliminary results on this. Increasing density should strongly change the situation. Clearly, I gave you a low density picture. When you are at 1/4 of density, and then when you start to form pair, you effectively even decrease the distance between particles. So it works, but it's a very low density picture. So if you increase the density, effective interaction will be playing in the game, and this will make maybe more computation. And a priori, this pair hopping can be, and it was previously, and can be generalized to higher dimension, and there we could expect also some non-trivial band effect to play a role in the band filling picture, more than in 1D. So thank you a lot for your attention, and I'm ready for some questions.
Right. Considering you use central charge equal to phase, it is of course possible to have central charge equal to through a different mechanism, which is a Lifshitz transition, by which you create more than 2 Fermi points, 4 Fermi points, for example, for the same species of fermions, just by distorting the dispersion relation of the particles in the Hartree-Fock approximation, for example. What are the signatures, specific signatures that distinguish between such a scenario and the one that you are discussing here?
Okay, so it may be, I don't really remember everything about Lifshitz transition, but it's a benefit feature. So first, the Rudman-Altman paper, they did some mean field, so you can see it as a Hartree-Fock. And so you can do the mean field on the 4-body term. Then you do the Goldberg transformation, you get some effective band dispersion, and indeed, you end up with a distortion of the bands, and you can end up with the chemical potential with more than 2 Fermi points. And then these Fermi points can scatter or not in 1D, and this is the way they try to understand the C equals 3/2 scenario. Somehow they went to C equal 2, and then they found that the interaction brought them back to C equals 3/2. But our band filling model is not the same as the mean field dispersion relation. It's different. We have 2 bands, and they add a single band with 4 Fermi points. And if we took their mean field approach, we could not reproduce what we got, the effective 2-field model. So yes, I could have shown this, but this was done. So in terms of band filling, if you call Lifshitz transition a band filling condition, somehow it's a sort of band filling condition, but not of the Hartree-Fock Hamiltonian. And our Hamiltonian is more based on look at the Hilbert space, look at the typical configuration, and which short it's more like a projection onto some subspace of the Hilbert space. What are the relevant configuration and what are the typical energy? And if you forget about the interaction between the pairs and fermions, the 2 terms that we have is just the terms coming from the Hilbert space choice that we made, not the mean field approximation.
So what about the experimental realization?
Good question. So I did not make a not very. So it's a bit far from what I understand. Direct realization. There is some proposal by people. It turns out to be an effective model that describes particle with some extra color in some extra dimension. This model can for FAO. Where you have a 1D and then you have an extra dimension either in spin, degrees of freedom, or lattice. And when you have a gauge field, from the hopping, you can get this effective sort of term with either +1 or -1. But it's not a microscopic model. In the condensed matter literature, I think people were also very phenomenological, saying that once you have a BCS state where you have pairs and you have a lattice, why don't this pair just hop from one side or one chain to the other? So maybe there is a way, maybe it exists, but maybe there is a way to implement directly and microscopically this kind of hopping term. But to my knowledge, it's not that microscopic. it's more effective.
Yeah, so would this all work in 2D?
What do you mean work? Like the coexistence?
For the physics, more or less. Or I understand that you cannot do the MRG, but
Well, we could try ladders first, but it would be more 1D, but you'll get a little bit of dispersion in y direction.
no, but I'm saying that the physics will be okay. Will it be just the physics of mixture of pairs and atoms, or there will be some, topological aspect wrapped around it?
I honestly don't know. For the mixture, I guess so. I guess that you could play, since the doping term can drive you into different points of the Bloch sphere. It can take you from, say, the k = 0 around, also in 2D, and take you somewhere else to make a new band and start to fill it. So I guess you could have some similar stuff in 2D. In 2D, it's I don't have much intuition, but I guess the film picture, maybe it has been done. I know that there is some DMFT paper on this kind of model in 2D, with full fermions and so on. One difficulty maybe is to extend the spinless fermion hopping in 2D. How do you make the pair hop, which you can make them rotate also? So it's not straightforward to write down the Hamiltonian. Or you can just take a part of it, but for the kinetic energy, maybe you can just take simple in both directions. But the pairs, has a direction, so you can hop along the direction or transverse to the direction. So it's a bit more complicated from this respect. So I expect that there could be some anisotropy in K-space, depending on the kind of Hamiltonian you write.
Okay, so you will have two types of pairs, and
I don't know.
One type
Possibly,
of atom.
or an internal degree of freedom for the pair, say for the rotation or whatever. I did not think much about this, but I guess it's interesting.
Any other question from our online friends?
Lorenzo is here, I forgot to say. So Lorenzo, who did the big part of the work, is here to answer the question.
So I have one very technical question. So you showed this interpolation formula for entropy. Can you comment where these two extra terms come from? Because
sorry,
this looks a little bit.
No, it was before.
Yeah, you just missed it.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Yeah, this one. So why those terms? Because it's.
Why is?
Yeah. Can you comment on this?
Yeah, so this formula in 1D. So
this is universal. Like this, this is from CFT.
This is from CFT. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you have a finite size CFT, and actually you could have L+1 instead of this, but this is the arc length. Okay, so this is CFT. And then in the early 2010, there was people doing numerics were always seeing this oscillation.
Yeah.
It was not like this term is just a nice bump. But you always see some oscillation. And people start to ask where they're coming from. So there was first some numerical models that were studied that were integrable. Like so you take free fermion, XX model, or XXZ, and so on. And people had some argument from this model, from exact solution, and so on. But that's the remaining term that are relevant is that when you cut it on a bond between two sides. And in this bond, you have fluctuation that comes with the particle jumping from one side to the other. And this has to do with kinetic energy. So phenomenologically, they found that actually, if you take the kinetic term, and these terms in the fit, they are computed from the energy. Okay, so this is an analytical formula, but this is the data. This is the data, and this is on the left the data. Okay, and then you just make a prefactor. Here, there's no proof of this, but I took both the kinetic energy from the pair jumping around the link and a single particle jumping around the link. This is just a shift. And then later on, there are papers by oh, sorry, the one who did this, Cardi and
Calabrese,
Calabrese.
yeah.
Then they study back to the correction, field theory, and so on, and had some argument that this kind of kinetic energy term also in the field theory were fairly wrong.
So this even some universal, like new
No, I
central
don't think
charges.
it's universal. I don't remember exactly. I don't think it's universal, but the argument, to what I remember, was that there is even a mistake. There should be no dagger. The argument is more that what term do we keep? Do we keep correlation from density? Whatever you take, it's about, you can take correlation, but why this correlation? It was argued also from field theory that it was a kinetic term, not just wrong. And I think there are also, I think Fagotti also worked on this in the lab.
Yeah, but for instance,
on an exact model.
Right, but
model.
for XX, like the last one would factorize, right? Because it's like free fermions.
Yes, I mean this is very specific to our model, and it's totally phenomenal. I put it. Well, somehow you see the signal.
No, that's okay. Perfect. That's why I'm asking. Yeah.
It's very a bit of cooking, but you see the signal from kinetic energy, and I know them. Actually, I know the signal from kinetic energy. I have them here. So.
Yes, and second question was so basically just to understand this phase separation. So you took translational invariant system, and then somehow you see like some domain walls, etc. And so this looks also like very well fantastic. And and then you showed that on 50 sites you have like roughly 20 and 30 occupied by different phases. But in infinite system, you expect this like combination of different phases this one. Yeah,
okay. That's actually a good question. So there are some subtlety in the numerics. Most of the time, you do the energy with open boundary condition because it converges better. And then you have edge effect. Sometimes these edge effects are good because they make you some little Friedel oscillation, give you some signal for density, otherwise density is flat, and so on. But here, if we have domains, okay, so most of the calculation before, even for the coexistence phase, where the energy converges pretty well, you have some edges and everything is fine. Now, when we have this, we first did not find this because we started with open boundary condition. It was a mess. It was a mess because the system tends to form phase separation, but you also have edges. And the system is not very large. So actually, you have sometimes domains of charge density waves, sometimes domains of liquids, and several domain walls, and two simulations do not be the same, and so on. So actually, this simulation were done with periodic boundary condition in the sense that this site was connected to the other one. And in this case, then the larger the domain, the better for the kinetic energy and for minimizing the interface wall. But actually, there is a wall here and a wall here. But with periodic boundary condition, and you see the size is not very large because we are using periodic boundary condition, we can have only two domains. So that's for the energy. And now for the understanding, it was a piece of thinking also, not very complicated, but we had to write things. This is all written in terms of densities. So LF is a fraction of the total of the systems. I went a bit fast on this, but it's a fraction. Here it's a density of fermions. So you have to understand that the system, it has two domains, and then you effectively adjust the density and the size, the relative size with respect to the total. But this is already at the thermodynamical limit.
Right. So
and even in this situation, so it's not a finite size effect. Even like for fluid, if you have phase separation in van der Waals, it's not a finite size effect.
Yeah, sure.
It's really the free energy density is below for the two domain solution than the single domain solution. So here it's the same idea. We had to rewrite everything at the thermodynamical limit in order to do properly the variational minimization. And of course, the energy is always on finite size, but it was coinciding rather well, so we are happy with that.
Right, but I was mostly asking, so in thermodynamic, can you have like 4 domain solutions?
Oh yes, like fluids. You could have droplets.
If
they are large enough. Sometimes you want to minimize the interfaces a priori. So two domains, he minimizes but if the energy of the interface is small, then and you have some other kind of perturbation, then you break the system into many droplets. That's no,
Yeah.
there could be droplets, and maybe this connects with some other work in the lab in similar systems.
Great, thanks.
If I calculate the compressibility, what will happen at transition point?
Good question. Which transition?
Over T to T prime, the one where you see the
coexistence phase?
yeah, the change of the center, the abrupt change of the central charge from charge compressibility, how it will look like.
I say naively that you have so you start from the compressibility of a single band, which is what it is, depending on the slopes. And I guess I guess it would not be a jump because the compressibility will be very low or very high. Sorry, it's either the inverse.
No, but you have C equal to 1, right?
Maybe there is some signal. In principle, there's some signal of band filling in the compressibility.
Mhm.
So I guess the N of nu curve will show some change of slopes. So maybe a jump in the compressibility.
Mm.
And when you have the true, so it's a good question because I guess the system always stays compressible here through the transition, but with a change in the slope. But when you go to the phase separation, which is ferro, what we call ferro, there it's infinite. So it's a really different phase separation. It's a ferro here, the one that we discussed here. And compressibility is definitely the way to.
Yeah, if you would have
So
like going from Latinger liquid to the thing which has a gap, yeah, goodbye compressibility. But here you kind of have from Latinger liquid to whatever,
to
3/2
another
still Latinger liquid,
liquid,
whatever.
yeah.
So you should just have a change of a slope. I asked you because I thought that you can equally calculate compressibility. It's the same amount of efforts as entropy. Thermodynamics. If you can do entropy, you can do compressibility. For or it's,
So this is entanglement entropy.
I mean S, where you used S to
So this is entanglement entropy.
Entanglement.
So it's not with temperature.
Oh,
Actually, we did not show it or do it really systematically, but usually you compute the one particle gap, and the compressibility is the inverse of this one particle gap.
Yes. 1 over L, and
Yes.
then you.
And here, you know that you can feed the system. So we did not get it quantitatively, but we could. Otherwise, we could also look at the effect of density by simply looking at the density versus chemical potential curve.
Yes, of course.
But here we work at fixed density, conserved number of particles, and it's another work to look at the effect of density. But this is what I put in the end. This is very interesting also because if we increase the density in the system, clearly the effective interaction between the particles and the pairs will be strived. Even for the impurity limits problem, I think if we increase the density, then you will have a pair within a bus of fermions which have a larger density and larger interaction. So, but already this was a piece of work. So, but definitely density compressibility is interesting. You could imagine crystal of pairs and fermions and things like that. I don't know.
Any other questions? Okay, then we thank Guillaume. We stop recording. Thank you very much.